So time for questions.
Lots of hands going up.
Yeah.
You're going to be question
David.
Richard.
Can we get a copy of your presentation, either online or here?
Well, it's going to be filmed.
So we'll put it up with the video and the slides, and we'll give it to you as a
Yeah, lovely.
you can put it on your site.
Yeah.
And share it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank
Good.
you.
Lovely.
Best news of all the evening was the thing about soya, because I'm vegetarian and I've given up soya for the last 18 months, but now I can go back to it. I mean, brilliant.
Oh, surprising. Yeah, I mean, there was only, soya foods, great. You can't really overdose on soya foods, or not just soya, lentils and other things.
Milk?
Yeah, fine, but just don't have the ginacing, which is a soya extract tablets, because that's probably overdoing it.
No, I never do
Yeah,
that anyway.
good.
So, Hugh?
Yeah, I'm taking a number of vitamins and supplements. Would I have to stay off those for a period of time before it would be useful to go to one of the tests that you offer?
Well, it's not. We don't do the test. We pick 3 or 4 biolabs, which are all based in London, and we've managed to negotiate the cheapest price possible. We don't make a profit on that, apart from the PayPal and what they charge, which is still quite a lot. And so it's not our test; it's available, and they recommend 48 hours is okay.
Desistance only for 48 hours?
Yeah.
prior?
But I mean, I think that's open to interpretation in a way, really. I mean, there's 2 ways you can do it. You can carry on with the same supplements and do the test and see what you're getting, or more importantly, stop for 2 or 3 days and see what your underlying levels are, which I think is probably better.
This gentleman?
I'm on poly-T actually,
Mm.
and I'm also on a vegan plus fish diet. Now, I've read Professor James Plant's book. I wanted to ask you about the fact that this situation with dairy products and the fact that people in China and in Japan don't seem to have hormone-related cancers like prostate cancer and breast cancer. So, and she puts that down to not obviously, to the difference in diet. Because when Chinese and Japanese move to the United States, they go onto a much richer protein-related diet, which relates to meat and so on. Now, that's one point. I wanted to know, what was your explanation for that? And that's my first question. The second thing is that she also points out that the body is 60% alkali and 40% acid, and this is affected by foods that we take in, and that this acid in fact seems to enable cancer cells to grow. So if you change the composition of the body to increase it from say 60% alkali to 80% alkali, then you've got a possibility of reducing cancer cell growth. Now, she takes food like on the dimension of, for example, things like raisins are metabolized by the body to become alkali, but on the extreme side, and something like cheese is highly acid in terms of its effect on the body. Do you agree with that?
Long question. There was actually a trial recently which showed if you reduce dairy products after bowel cancer, you have a higher relapse rate. So that was about 6 months ago, and that went out on the newsletter. Obviously, there's a lot of things Japanese and Chinese do as well as not eat milk. You know, they have lots of soya, they don't eat much protein. There's another study from Japan showed that rich Japanese men who still have a Japanese diet with less milk are having increased risk of prostate cancer, and even though they mainly eat fish, because they're actually eating fish 3 times a day now, not 3 times a week. So, you know, it's all to do with protein excess, to be honest. So even fish is harmful in excess. But there was another thing, I don't know if you saw pesco-vegetarianism. Have you heard that term? That's supposed to, well, I didn't know what it means, but I think it means vegetarians who eat fish. That's supposed to be the best diet. So you're on the best diet. So well done for that.
But are you saying there's no relationship between dairy and prostate and breast cancers?
Well, the milk processing has changed in the recent times, so there's not so much antibiotics and phytoestrogens in them. I'm sure old practices of milk production, and obviously milk is quite fatty, and we know that people who have higher cholesterols do worse after cancer as well. So, but if you're having small amounts of milk, the evidence is not that it's harmful. I mean, I know Jane Plant very well, and that's the only thing we probably disagree on. Everything else is fantastic, and she's a great advocate of diet.
And the alkali acid ratio?
Well, as you saw from my study, my talk, what works best in the body, that it's working properly. And we have a pH in every cell, which is the same. So I don't understand this 80-20%. Every cell should have the same pH or it'll die. And you should maintain a healthy pH. So trying to alter the acidity is probably not wise. What she's referring to, if you have foods, if you ingest food, which causes acidity in your gut, it's harmful, and cheese would do that. So I suspect you mean the gut acidity is altered rather than the cellular acidity.
I don't know if Catherine, if you want to add anything to that, because it's a discussion that comes up on a daily basis at Maggie's about, you know, the dairy and alkaline acids debate.
Well, I think it's very difficult with the acid-alkaline debate because a lot of people get very caught up in that. I mean, what I would say is that, yeah, obviously some foods may increase the acid environment around our cells, which can increase inflammation. I think it probably all gets back to inflammation in the end. But as Tom said, you know, there isn't any really consistent research to show that dairy in moderation, and I totally agree with moderation, has any really detrimental effects. But I do think we need to think about quality of the products we're eating, and I think that fat content of dairy can be not that great, to be honest, because of industrial farming. So I think, you know, anything like that to try and make sure that it's of good quality can have some. But I would still say, as I say with most things, in moderation, you know, really.
Thanks, Catherine. This lady here.
Hi. I've got two questions, please. The first one is, as this talk was all about lifestyles and cancer, what effect does stress have on cancer and relapses? And my second question is, because I've suffered from ovarian cancer and your specialty is prostate, so would you know what studies are being done for ovarian, or who are the specialists in ovarian?
I mean, that's a good point. I do get asked that. You say, why are you talking about bowel, breast and prostate? Well, because they're the most common ones. So that's where the data comes from. But whenever you see a new bit of research about another tumour type, like pancreas or something, the data's pretty consistent. So I think as lifestyle is concerned, you can more or less say it's ubiquitous to all tumour types. So things like exercise and things I would strongly encourage. What was the first question? Stress, yes. Well, again, there's not much data coming through, but the data you do see, such as the prostate one, which is the biggest one, showed quite clearly if you were depressed or had anxiety, you do have an increased risk of relapse. Now, of course, that's just going to make you more anxious, isn't it? So I shouldn't have told you that. But, you know, there are coping strategies, like you've come here, and the Maggie's will do things to reduce. So
loads of things that you can learn to combat that.
So attend Maggie's, go for the relaxation course.
We'll support you.
Sorry.
Yep, sorry. You.
Do you have an opinion about xylitol, the sugar substitute?
Is that the sort of plant?
Yes, it's a natural one. It's not an aspartame.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you like sugar, it'd be better to take that than sugar, because it doesn't. The problem with sugar, when you, especially on an empty stomach, I always say to my patients, if you have sugar, have it after a meal, you know, so the effect is due. But getting up in the morning and putting honey on your sugar puffs, you will just get a sugar rush, and insulin-like growth factor will go through the roof. If you add insulin-like growth factors to cells in a petri dish, they grow like wildfire. So, if we think of self an experiment, don't have processed sugar on an empty stomach. So it's best to actually avoid the taste of sugar, to try to, because your taste buds will get used to not having sugar and you'll begin to like it. But of course, it's not sugar and it doesn't do that. So if you want that taste, that would be better than missing it out.
So natural sugars in honey, best avoided as well?
Honey has lots of health things with it. It's like wine. I always say, is wine healthy? Well, it's got healthy things and unhealthy things. So in moderation, honey on an empty stomach, I think, is bad because you get this sugar rush. But, if you mix it with food, and it's certainly got lots of polyphenols and antioxidants in as well. So, it's better than sugar, that's for sure.
Yeah.
With the soya thing, there's been so much controversy with it. First we're told it's good, then we're told it's bad. But my feeling is that it has to be organic soya, because most of the soya produced, they say 95% of the soya is GM, which people with cancer should avoid, like the plague. But also the Japanese, Chinese tend to eat fermented soya, which apparently, I don't know what, I did read it but I've forgotten, is even better and more healthy. I just wondered what
you are right. There's different types, fermented, non-fermented soya. There's most of the evidence is for the fermented, like miso soup and things like that.
Which is fermented.
Yeah, and also sauerkraut and things like that's got the same sort of thing. I agree. And I mean, the milk I have has said it's not GM, which is the most common type. And it's what the press do. They build something up as this sort of wonder food, and then they spend the next 6 months saying how unhealthy it is. So it is confusing. It is confusing. And there, like all things, I have soy milk every day, for example, and I plant soya, but probably best to rotate it. So then go on. Some people take almond milk.
I've reduced my soya content by making my own almond milk. So I'm taking both.
Yeah. So that's a very good idea. That's a good example that you should rotate food, so you don't take the same thing all the time.
Thanks, Dennis. This gentleman just here.
Yeah. Thanks. Sorry. I was wondering what the link, or if there is a link, or any news on POM T's effectiveness with prostate cancer sufferers that are a bit more advanced and perhaps in stages of chemotherapy. It would appear that the initial group that you spoke about earlier were at a kind of low level and on weight kind of more advanced.
Yes, the cohort in the study was active surveillance and PSA relapse after radiotherapy, which you shouldn't go straight back into hormones unless the PSA starts going climbing rapidly. That's the easy group to do, because there's lots of them and there's no other things. We have had anecdotal reports like the broccoli soup guy, which seems to help, and obviously I see a lot of patients on it now, and I get, especially on intermittent hormone therapy, I'm getting the impression that you manage to go longer periods off the hormones. And if you plot a graph, you can see that maybe they only lasted 6 months, 9 months before, and they take Promethazine, they might last 2 years, even 3 years on it. So my gut feeling is yes, but I can't say that's evidence-based because you really need to do the randomized trial. But that we are trying to get some money off the manufacturers to sort of set up that study. But many people say, look, if it helps prostate cancer and you showed it in active surveillance, you're going to get the same benefits, whatever stage. But that's only an opinion. In terms of during chemotherapy, which is interesting because we get emails saying, I mustn't take it during chemotherapy because all my oncologists say you shouldn't have antioxidants during chemotherapy. Of course, what do the data show? Curcumin helps reduce multi-drug resistance for Taxotere, and most of the trials shows you get a synergistic effect. So that's complete nonsense. Probably if you took a massive dose of antioxidants on the same day as the chemotherapy, it might marginally reduce the effect, but actually the data shows it enhances it. Nevertheless, we do say to patients, maybe don't take it on the day of your chemo and immediately afterwards.
Thank you. This lady here.
I'm always quite interested in the thing about when one's looking at cancer.
questionnaires, say, that one gets, say, like 100 million women survey.
Yeah.
They always ask you what you put into yourself and what you do with yourself. But there's no actual, there's no category where they're investigating what is sloshed on your vegetables. For instance, my mother died of stomach cancer.
Right.
She grew all her own vegetables, but she happened to live in South Yorkshire, and there was a coli plant nearby, and it's quite likely that there were dioxins being sloshed, plus whatever my father put on the stuff to kill the moles and the aphids and everything else. So, you know, there were all these poisons in the garage when after my mother died, and we wondered whether really this should be investigated, and it's always a little tricky thing because of big business and so on. But very often, you know, like the effect of Chernobyl, for instance, the effect of Fukushima, you know, on the way that actually drug companies try to block WHO findings on what's happened in Belarus and Ukraine since Chernobyl, where most of the stuff, the fallout went. But we also have fallout from Chernobyl still affecting our animals, you know, the land.
I'm sure.
So, but I just wondered about that. But one of the things I really wanted to ask was because my husband has been treated with quite a lot of chemotherapy and had had edema as a result, possibly of a last type of chemotherapy that he had. So I was looking up on a website and I came across this kind of study from Harvard Med, where they were talking about the effect of the chemicals on your heart and on your cardiovascular system. And I just wondered whether, you know, what stage, because obviously some of the things that are kind of seemingly good for helping you with cancer are also quite good for your heart. But I mean, is there a sort of current thing going on in this country which deals with the effect, not just the short-term instant effect, you know, whilst you're actually going to chemotherapy where you might have heart failure, but the long-term effect where you suddenly find that you're starting to get short of breath and you've got some kind of heartbeat or like the man who's got this edema.
Well, the cardiac morbidity is one of the big toxicities we worry about in that document, the National Cancer Survivorship Initiative. And we know that, you know, exercise and keeping your cholesterol down, monitoring your blood pressure are all very, very important. Certainly for radiotherapy, we're now doing breath holding and techniques so that the heart doesn't get any radiotherapy at all, and that's helping a lot, because a lot of the morbidity, as you say, it might be 10, 15 years later. So you might say, well, everything's going well, and then suddenly you see an increased risk of angina or edema 15 years later. So you've got to look at trials in the very long term to make sure you're not causing an increased risk of toxicity in the heart. And there are lots of drugs which do it, Herceptin and some of the other biologicals. But, you know, it comes down to first principles. You know, the things which help you stop you getting heart disease will stop you getting heart disease as a consequence of cancer treatment. So you make sure you're exercising, keep your cholesterol down, keep your blood pressure down. But, you know, there's no one food which stands out, I'm afraid, as a protective food for heart damage.
What is the main benefit of Herceptin?
Stops your breast cancer coming back. And if you have breast cancer and it's spread, you get control for significantly longer. I mean, it is one of the most effective developments in oncology, probably in the last 50 years.
Just one more question. Yeah. We've
I'll
got
let-
two
I'll let you
ladies.
decide.
Is there someone else as well?
You
over
can ask questions
okay.
afterwards as well.
It's very quick. It's how
Sam.
much broccoli, turmeric, or whatever do we have to eat to
Great question.
equivalent of protein?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, no. Well, in the POMI2, because we get asked this, it's basically a bowl of broccoli, half a teaspoon of turmeric, about 5 cups of green tea, and there's about a quarter of a pomegranate. So, I mean, the advantage of that, you know, I'm sure those things.
So I have to eat that a day or
Well as I would say. I mean, I don't know any trial which shows you can overeat polyphenols. Yeah, I mean, we look very, unlike vitamins and minerals, which you can, but you have to be pretty determined if you overexpose yourself to antioxidants. Considering how many antioxidants and carcinogens we're exposed to, so yeah.
Eileen?
Yes, I've been told that I have to go on recommended bisphosphonates.
Mm.
Have you got any advice about this? Because it seems very scary to me. I used there like a time, I've still got osteopenia, and then, should I wait till it goes into osteoporosis, or I'm not quite sure about it.
Well, you saw the study from America, which showed if you have osteopenia after breast cancer and you're not on bisphosphonates, you actually have a higher relapse rate. So not only will bisphosphonates help your bones, they'll probably help your cancer as well. But what I would advise on that is that take as low a dose as possible. So concentrate on the vitamin D containing foods, soya products, other proteins, exercise regularly. Perhaps take bisphosphonates at a lower dose, get a bone density scan at a year or 18 months, and maybe have a break from them. So you don't have to take them for the rest of your life. But I wouldn't not take them because they're very good drugs, actually.
Yeah, I need to have my teeth seen too, but that seems to be the problem.
I've never seen a case of osteonecrosis with bisphosphonates. You always talk about it, but it's very rare compared to the problem. There is a risk, yeah, if you have dental treatment, but you can stop them.
Dentists won't take out your teeth when you're on bisphosphonates.
Correct, but you can stop them for a little while and then have your treatment. So you don't have to take them every day.
And last question from David.
In the last few days, I can't remember which day it was, Radio 4 carried a programme from some eminent professor, it may have been yourself, talking about, it was either entitled The Gut Report, or The Gut Study.
Yes.
Yeah, I did
junk
read it.
food, which unfortunately we all tend to indulge in, tended to block the absorption of the essential nutrients in the lower gut. Whereas if we ate just about everything, as we used to do hundreds, thousands of years ago, as foragers, that was a good thing to do rather than just processed food. Do you go along with that?
Yeah,
I mean, you do, because of
well,
what you said
junk food, yeah, it
100
processed.
trillion microbes in our gut.
Well, you're talking about probiotics now, and there was a very good, there's a very good experiment which I went to because I go to all these sort of lifestyle conferences now, which I find fascinating. They got some Africans and moved them to California. Well, they didn't actually. They moved them to a room and mimicked California, and they got Californians, put them into a room and mimicked Africa and measured the gut commensals, and there was something like 1 trillion different bacteria changed when you ate burgers and things for 6 weeks, and vice versa. So these poor Africans were force-fed junk food, and their whole colonization changed. So the issue of probiotics and acidity changes dramatically when we go into a junk food diet. And those are the things which you then look at the cells in the gut and see if they're about to change into cancer. So you see if they develop into dysplasia and so. They all massively increased at the same time as the gut commensal and the acidity changed. Thank you.